Good morning from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Stephen Clark, editor of Spaceflight Now, and welcome to our live coverage of the launch of SpaceX's Transporter 3 mission. Liftoff of the Transporter 3 rideshare mission is scheduled for 10:25 a.m. Eastern Time, or 15:25 UTC. You're looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 rocket out at Pad 40, a few miles away, where SpaceX is preparing to load propellants into the two-stage launch vehicle. That fueling process should begin around 9:47 a.m. Excuse me, 9:50 a.m. Eastern Time, or 14:50 UTC. So around 20 minutes from now, we should start to see the start of kerosene and liquid oxygen loading into the Falcon 9 rocket. Weather conditions this morning on the Space Coast look ideal for a launch with light winds and nearly perfectly clear skies. The official launch forecast issued yesterday called for a 70% chance of acceptable weather, with a chance that clouds in the area could violate one of the launch weather constraints. However, this morning there are no signs of any of those clouds over the Space Coast. Skies are clear. Everything looks good for liftoff at 10:25 and 39 seconds Eastern Time, 15:25 and 39 seconds UTC. There are 105 small satellites buttoned up for liftoff this morning inside the payload fairing of the Falcon 9 rocket. In this live view of the launch pad, you can see the first stage of the Falcon 9. There, it's a little bit difficult to see, perhaps because the rocket is a little backlit with the sun behind and above it. However, you can probably make out the dark coating, the dark sooty markings on the first stage booster. That booster stands 15 stories tall and has made 9 previous flights to space. And above that, there is a black interstage structure that connects the two stages of the Falcon 9. Inside that structure is the engine bell for the Merlin engine on the upper stage. And the bright white, clean upper stage is visible above that. The white skin is on the outside of the propellant tanks on stage 2 of the Falcon 9 rocket. And then above stage 2 is the payload fairing. The clamshell payload fairing consists of two half structures that button up around and encapsulate the 105 satellites awaiting liftoff this morning. The Falcon 9 countdown is now passing T minus 50 minutes. About 15 minutes from now, we should hear confirmation that propellant loading is underway. Again, kerosene and liquid oxygen will begin loading into both stages of the Falcon 9 rocket in the final 35 minutes of the countdown. That's a big milestone. A few minutes before that, SpaceX's launch team will be polled electronically for a go to begin that fueling sequence. And once that propellant loading sequence begins, today's 29-minute launch window will effectively shrink to just 1 second, um, because the propellants loaded into the Falcon 9 are densified and super chilled. And once they're loaded, the clock is ticking essentially, and those propellants begin to warm up in the ambient temperature and begin boiling off. So once SpaceX gives that go to start loading propellants, they will be locked into an instantaneous launch opportunity at 10:25 and 39 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, or 15:25 UTC. Up until that point, SpaceX has a 29-minute window that extends until 10:54 a.m. Eastern Time, 15:54 UTC. Today's Falcon 9 mission will be the second SpaceX launch of the year, and also the second launch from Cape Canaveral this year, following a launch just last week, a week ago today, that opened the 2022 launch campaign with a mission carrying up 49 Starlink internet satellites. And as you can see on this graphic, some mission statistics for today's flight. This will be the 136th launch of a Falcon 9 rocket since the launch vehicle's first iteration debuted back in June of 2010. These 136 launches have lifted off from 3 different launch pads, um, 2 here on the Florida Space Coast, 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, 1 at Kennedy Space Center, and also a launch complex at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. And it'll be the 120th Falcon 9 launch that will have originated from Florida's Space Coast, and the 78th that will have launched from Pad 40, which has hosted the largest share of Falcon missions to date. It's also the 10th launch of this particular Falcon 9 booster, booster 1058 in SpaceX's fleet. This first stage has been to space and back 9 times. It debuted back in May of 2020 on SpaceX's Crew Dragon Demo 2 mission with NASA, which was the first SpaceX mission to carry astronauts into orbit, and ended a 9-year drought in U.S. orbital human spaceflight capability dating back to the end of the space shuttle program in 2011. This mission, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, is the Transporter 3 mission. So it's the third Transporter small-sat rideshare mission that SpaceX has launched, beginning the first Transporter mission back in January of 2021, a year ago this month. That mission launched 143 small satellites. That was followed up in June by the launch of 88 more satellites on the Transporter 3 mission for a range of international and U.S. customers. And then today's launch will carry 105 small satellites into orbit. These satellites range in size from the size of a soda can to the size of a washing machine, and they come from 20 customers and are customers in 20 different countries around the world. The Falcon 9 countdown just passed the T minus 43-minute mark. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, this launch is carrying 105 small satellites into a sun synchronous orbit, a polar sun synchronous orbit out of Cape Canaveral. These 105 satellites come from 20 customers in 20 different countries. This view shows a satellite view of Launch Complex 40 here at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This was taken about a year ago by a Super Dove satellite in the fleet owned by Planet, which has around 200 small satellites in its constellation, providing a daily refresh imagery of all of Earth's land masses. This mission will carry 44 new Super Dove satellites. These satellites are based on the CubeSat form factor, a 3-unit or 3U CubeSat, about the size of a shoebox or a large toaster oven. And these satellites carry optical cameras to gather medium resolution, wide angle images of all of Earth's land masses. This view was taken of Pad 40 shortly before the Transporter 1 launch last January, showing the circular perimeter around the launch pad. This is the same launch pad where the Falcon 9 is awaiting liftoff this morning. So 44 of the 105 satellites come from Planet, based in San Francisco. Other satellites on board include a number of microsatellites, each weighing between 50 and 100 kilograms. These satellites, 5 of these satellites come from radar remote sensing companies. 2 come from a company called ISI in Finland. 2 come from Capella Space, which is based also in California. And there's also 1 satellite from Umbra Space with a radar payload on board. In addition to the larger satellites, larger microsatellites on this mission, there are more than 20 so-called pocket cubes on board. These are about the size of a soda can for customers around the world, as well as a number of CubeSats on board. These CubeSats come from customers in North America, Europe, South America, and Asia, represented on this mission. As you can see, these images show some of the CubeSats on board this mission being built and tested before they were shipped to Cape Canaveral from their owners and operators to be integrated onto the Falcon 9 payload stack for the Transporter 3 mission. Now back with a live view of the Falcon 9 out at Pad 40. The countdown passed the 40-minute mark a few seconds ago. We expect to hear a confirmation in a few minutes that SpaceX's launch team is go for propellant loading. So we'll stand by for that update and we'll bring it to you when we have it. Hello again, and we just heard confirmation from SpaceX's launch team that all stations on the team have pulled go for propellant loading and launch. So the countdown is on track for liftoff at 10:25 a.m. Eastern Time, 15:25 UTC. And the launch auto sequence has started. So that began at T minus 35 minutes. Propellants are now loading into the Falcon 9 rocket. This process begins with loading of kerosene and liquid oxygen into stage one. That's the darker part of the rocket you see toward the bottom of the vehicle. Those propellants will be feeding the 9 Merlin engines during their 2-minute, 19-second burn to send the Transporter 3 mission toward space this morning. And that supply will also feed the engines used for the burns to return the booster to landing zone 1 for landing around 8.5 minutes after liftoff. Kerosene fuel is also being loaded into stage 2 concurrently. That process will begin or is now underway and will conclude around T minus 20 minutes. That's the first propellant tank that'll be fully loaded this morning. Again, that is expected to be loaded around T minus 20 minutes, setting the stage for the start of loading of liquid oxygen into stage 2. The oxidizer will begin flowing into the second stage at T minus 16 minutes or at 10:09 a.m. Eastern Time. T minus 30 minutes and counting. The SpaceX countdown is proceeding apace this morning for liftoff at 10:25 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 15:25 UTC. Again, this mission is designated Transporter 3. It's SpaceX's third small satellite rideshare mission as part of a program aimed at the small satellite launch market, uh, where SpaceX can aggregate large numbers of small satellites on a single heavy launch vehicle like the Falcon 9. That therefore reduces the launch costs for small businesses, universities, and government agencies that otherwise may not be able to afford a dedicated ride on a more expensive, smaller rocket. Fueling of the Falcon 9 out at Pad 40 continues at this time. Everything looking good for an on time launch at 10:25 a.m. Eastern Time from Pad 40. The Falcon 9 countdown has passed T minus 22 minutes and 30 seconds. In this live view of Complex 40, you can see the wisps of oxygen vapors streaming away from the rocket and the strongback structure. Propellant loading proceeding as expected this morning, as far as we know. Uh, Kerosene being loaded into stage 1 and stage 2 at this time. Liquid oxygen being loaded into stage 1. The second stage of the Falcon 9 will be loaded with liquid oxygen beginning in around 6 minutes or so. That will be the final tank of the 4 main propellant tanks on the rocket to be filled this morning. Launch from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station remains scheduled for 10:25 and 39 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, 15:25 UTC. Again, this mission, called Transporter 3, is carrying 105 small satellites into a polar sun synchronous orbit, targeting a deployment altitude of around 326 miles or 525 kilometers. The countdown just passed the T minus 20-minute mark. In this view of the Falcon 9 out at pad 40, you're seeing a vent of oxygen vapors coming from the strongback. This is a normal occurrence in SpaceX's Falcon 9 countdowns. It happens around T minus 20 minutes or so, and it coincides with the start of chill down of those liquid oxygen loading lines leading up the strongback structure to stage 2. That super cold cryogenic propellant will begin loading into stage two through those lines in a couple of minutes, and this chill down conditions that plumbing for the flow of oxidizer into the rocket beginning at T minus 16 minutes. We also heard a minute or so ago that the RP1 kerosene load into stage 2 has been completed. So that's the first of the 4 main propellant tanks on the Falcon 9 to be filled this morning. Kerosene and liquid oxygen continue flowing into stage 1 and will continue to do so until the final few minutes of the countdown. In fact, the liquid oxygen loading will continue until around T minus 2 minutes, when that loading will be ended and secured. And at that point, the Falcon 9 will be fully loaded with fuel and oxidizer, weighing around 1.2 million pounds, setting the stage for pressurization of the propellant tanks in the final minute of the countdown, and ultimately liftoff at 10:25 and 39 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. SpaceX's countdown is now passing T minus 15 minutes and 20 seconds. SpaceX's launch team confirmed a moment ago that liquid oxygen has started loading into stage two. Countdown remains on schedule for liftoff at 10:25 a.m. Eastern Time, or 15:25 UTC. This mission will feature the first landing of a first stage booster by SpaceX back at the Cape Canaveral spaceport since June. SpaceX typically lands its first stage boosters on drone ships positioned downrange in the ocean. However, for select missions that carry lighter payloads into low Earth orbit, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket reserves enough propellant for the booster to essentially reverse course and return to the launch site using a reignition of its Merlin engines. And that'll be the case on today's flight. The first stage will shut off at T plus 2 minutes and 19 seconds, leaving the second stage to continue its climb into orbit with the 105 small satellites on the Transporter 3 rideshare flight. Meanwhile, stage one itself, standing around 15 stories tall, will perform a flip maneuver using coal gas thrusters and then reignite a subset of its Merlin engines. That reignition, called a boost back burn, will essentially zero out the booster's downrange velocity and begin returning back toward the Florida coast as the rocket is near the von Karman line, near the edge of space, at an altitude of around 60 miles or 100 kilometers, just southeast of Cape Canaveral. With that boost back burn complete, the Falcon 9 booster will coast to an apogee and then begin falling back toward Earth. It'll perform an entry burn to slow down and start guiding itself toward SpaceX's landing zone 1, and then a final landing burn using just the single Merlin engine in the web of 9 engines at the bottom of the booster will ultimately slow down the stage for a landing at Landing Zone 1, located around 9 miles south of Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This will be the 21st overall landing of a first stage booster, of a Falcon first stage booster at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station since the very first Falcon recovery back in December 2015. And it'll be the 102nd intact recovery of a Falcon booster overall, including landings here at Cape Canaveral on SpaceX's fleet of drone ships, as well as 3 booster landings on land at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. That landing of the first stage will be accompanied by a pair of double sonic booms and a roar from the Merlin engines as the booster makes its final descent back toward the ground. That landing expected around 8.5 minutes after liftoff. The Falcon 9 countdown is now approaching the T minus 8 minute point. In about 1 minute, at T minus 7 minutes, the chill down procedure will begin to begin conditioning the Merlin 1D engines at the bottom of the first stage. This thermal conditioning will involve flowing small amounts of liquid oxygen, chilled several hundred degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, through the engine plumbing. That'll condition some of the components and structures in the turbomachinery for the more rapid flow of propellant that it will see when the engines light off just a couple of seconds before liftoff. Also, at this point in the countdown, SpaceX's launch team is expected to be finalizing the configuration of the rocket's guidance and navigation system. And then at T minus 5 minutes, we should hear confirmation that the kerosene fuel load has been completed into the first stage. That will, just at the Falcon 9 rocket, liquid oxygen will continue flowing until the T minus 2 minute mark. Now, at T minus 4 minutes and 20 seconds, we should be seeing retraction of the strongback structure to the right of the Falcon 9 rocket momentarily. At this point, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 46,000 gallons of kerosene fuel in both stages. You can see in our view of pad 40, the strongback has retracted about a degree and a half or so from the Falcon 9 rocket's skin. Now, T minus 3 minutes and 30 seconds. 2 minutes and 10 seconds, we've heard confirmation from SpaceX that the liquid oxygen load on stage 1 has been completed. We should hear confirmation that liquid oxygen loading on stage 2 is complete momentarily. Again, we expect the first stage booster, after it takes off and heads toward the south-southeast. Once its roll is complete, it'll come back for a landing at landing zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. That landing expected T plus 8 minutes and 27 seconds. And locals in the area should expect to hear sonic booms upon the rocket's return. T minus 60 seconds and counting. At this point, the Falcon 9 countdown should be in startup mode. Control of the countdown has been handed over to the rocket's onboard computers at this point. Also, at this point in the countdown, the propellant tanks should be pressurizing in preparation for liftoff. 40 seconds. T minus 10 seconds. Ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket with 105 satellites on. The Falcon 9 is now heading downrange. Sound from the rocket's 9 Merlin engines now reaching our location 4 miles from the launch pad. T plus 30 seconds. 1.7 million pounds of thrust from those 9 Merlin engines starting to drive the Falcon 9 rocket off the Florida coast, heading south-southeast over the Atlantic Ocean, taking aim on a polar orbit with an inclination of 97.5 degrees. T plus 1 minute, 45 seconds, everything looking good. Falcon 9 climbing into clear skies, heading to the south-southeast on a polar orbit trajectory. First stage continuing to fire at this time as the rocket heads through the stratosphere. And we saw the first stage separation as well as the start of the boost back burn of the first stage. The first stage began firing cold gas thrusters and then reignited 3 of its engines to begin a boost back maneuver heading back toward Cape Canaveral. Meanwhile, we can see the upper stage Merlin engine ignited as expected, continuing downrange. And we see that first stage performing its dogleg maneuver. You can see the right-hand turn the upper stage is performing at this time to line up with its polar launch corridor. That boost back burn appears to be complete at this time, continuing to see cold gas thrusters firing on stage 1.
Back on land at landing zone 1. This is known as return to launch site, as opposed to a drone ship landing.
We're going to switch to SpaceX's live coverage. It includes onboard video footage from the Falcon 9 booster
Stage
as it comes
separation
back
confirmed.
toward Cape Canaveral.
Back startup. Stage 1 boost back startup.
So you can see there on the right-hand side of your screen, second stage MVAC engine has ignited. The first stage on the left-hand side is performing the boost back, which, as you saw just moments ago, the first stage flipped itself over and is now making its way back to the coast of Florida. Everything looking nominal with second stage trajectory there on the right-hand side of your screen.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
All right, so there we heard the call out that the boost back burn has concluded. That was the first of 3 burns that the first stage will perform today. And we can see the grid fins beginning to deploy there on the left-hand side of your screen. The next event we have coming up is fairing deployment. All right, there you can see the 2 fairing halves have separated, fallen away from the vehicle, exposing the 105 spacecraft to the vacuum of space. As a reminder, we will be attempting to recover these brand new fairing halves once they make their way back to Earth. We're currently in the first of 2 MVAC burns. This first one will last until T plus 8 minutes and 26 seconds. About another 4 minutes from now. Beautiful views from the first stage there on the left-hand side of your screen and the second stage on the right. The next milestone will be the first stage booster re-entry burn. Falcon 9 executes an entry burn to slow itself down before hitting the dense part of the atmosphere. Without this burn, relying on the atmosphere alone to slow down the Falcon 9 would put unnecessary strain on the rocket. And there we can see the east coast of Florida.
Stage 2 on a nominal trajectory.
Space Coast there in the background of on the left-hand side. Once again, we are launching the Transporter 3 mission today. This is SpaceX's 3rd dedicated smallsat rideshare program mission, and it's our 2nd mission of 2022. SpaceX is targeting at least 3 dedicated rideshare flights to sun-synchronous orbit per year, and we also offer opportunities for a ride to orbit on our Starlink missions, which launch every couple of weeks. Smallsats can ride to space on SpaceX's Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, as well as Starship in the not-too-distant future. On the left-hand side of your screen, we can see those grid fins have deployed. Falcon 9 has 4 hypersonic grid fins positioned at the base of the inner stage. and they orient the rocket during reentry by moving the center of pressure. We can also see some white puffs of gas coming off from Falcon 9. Those are cold nitrogen gas, which help with attitude control. After first stage landing, the second stage will cut off its MVAC engine and relight it approximately 45 minutes later for deployment of all 105 spacecraft. As for first stage, its next event is the entry burn.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there on your screen, we can see that that entry burn has begun. Once again, this burn is designed to slow the booster down as it returns through the dense part of the atmosphere.
Stage 2 on nominal trajectory.
As we just heard there,
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
everything continuing to look good with second stage. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be attempting to recover this booster for the 10th time today, and we're targeting a land landing at landing zone 1. The first stage has just one more burn left, the
Stage
landing
1
burn.
FTS is safe.
It begins just before touchdown and provides the booster a soft descent before landing. About the same time that Falcon lands, we are expecting SECO, or second engine cutoff, 1 of our second stage. Just a few seconds away from landing,
Stage
and
1 is transonic.
vehicles traveling around 900 miles per hour really puts the deceleration into perspective. In the span of less than a minute, we'll have reduced from twice the speed of a
Stage
jet
1 landing burn.
all the way down to 0 as the rocket lands. There's a view on the right-hand side
Stage 2 in terminal guidance.
of the landing, back at landing zone 1.
Stage 1 landing light support. Stage 1 landing is confirmed.
As you heard from the call out there and from the cheers behind me, we have successfully landed this Falcon 9 for the 10th time. It's also the 102nd recovery of an orbital class rocket.
Hello again from Kennedy Space Center at T plus 11 minutes. The Falcon 9, as you saw in our live stream, lifted off on time at 10:25 a.m. Eastern Time, or 15:25 UTC. The rocket climbed into a beautiful, clear morning sky, heading toward the southeast, initially downrange over the Atlantic Ocean. The first stage completed its 2-minute 19-second burn and then detached to begin coming back toward Cape Canaveral. And long-range tracking cameras, as well as our vantage point here at Kennedy Space Center, yielded wonderful views, outstanding views of the Falcon 9 booster as it came back toward Earth after its trip to space this morning. The first stage booster nailed its landing at landing zone 1 about 8.5 minutes after liftoff. This completed this particular booster's 10th flight to space, and it nailed its landing and has a chance to go for an 11th mission sometime in the coming months. Meanwhile, stage 2 of the Falcon 9 rocket continued downrange. It performed what's called a dogleg maneuver, or a slight right-hand turn to after initially flying offshore to begin flying toward the south parallel to Florida's east coast, just off the coast of South Florida, and then over the Florida Straits and over Cuba, and ultimately over the Caribbean Sea, heading south toward Central America, and then over the near the west coast of South America. It will track in the coming minutes. That second stage burn lasted about 6 minutes. SpaceX confirmed the cutoff of that burn on time after reaching a nominal parking orbit. And this is a slightly elongated orbit that the Falcon 9 rocket will fly in. The launch vehicle is coasting at this point, heading again south. It'll fly over Antarctica and then head back northbound over the Indian Ocean near the east coast of Africa, at which point it'll reignite its Merlin vacuum engines for just a couple of seconds. That powerful engine only needs to fire for a couple of seconds to circularize its orbit at an altitude of around 326 miles or 525 kilometers roughly. That burn expected at T plus 55 minutes or at 11:31 a.m. Eastern Time, 16:31 UTC, around about 52 minutes from now or so, if I'm doing my math correct. And then that will set the stage for a series of deployments that will last about a half hour. These Falcon 9 rocket will begin deploying its 105 small satellite payloads in groups of 1, 2, 3, and 4 over the course of about a 30-minute period. And we expect to have live onboard camera footage from the Falcon 9 upper stage during at least part of that deployment sequence. So we expect to be able to see some of the payloads coming off the upper stage. That deployment process is expected to begin at T plus 59 minutes or at 11:34 a.m. Eastern Time. So we're going to pause our coverage at this point, our commentary, for a little bit as the Falcon 9 continues to coast downrange. We'll be back with periodic updates during this coast, as well as we'll cut back to SpaceX's live technical commentary for that restart of Stage 2 and the spacecraft deployment sequence. Now, more than 31 minutes into this morning's Falcon 9 mission, the Falcon 9's upper stage continues to coast in low Earth orbit. It's currently in a parking orbit at this time after completing its first of 2 engine firings around 8.5 minutes after liftoff from here at Cape Canaveral. Liftoff occurring at 10:25 a.m. Eastern Time or 15:25 UTC, right on time. After climbing through clear skies, the Falcon 9's first stage booster returned to a dramatic and rumbling landing here at Cape Canaveral, landing at Landing Zone 1, SpaceX's recovery site, around 9 miles to the south of Pad 40, where the Falcon 9 departed. With that dramatic landing, the Falcon 9 booster that was used on today's flight has completed its 10th trip to space. Meanwhile, the second stage of the Falcon 9 continued into orbit after completing its first burn again at about 8.5 minutes after launch. It shut off its Merlin vacuum engine and is now coasting through orbit. The rocket is now approaching Antarctica. It'll be soaring over the McMurdo ground station in Antarctica around this time, and we'll continue downrange over the Antarctic continent, and then we'll head north over the Southern Ocean, and we'll fly roughly parallel to Africa's east coast. We'll be flying east of Madagascar over the Indian Ocean when the MVAC engine on stage 2 will reignite for just a couple of seconds. That reignition is expected at 11:31 a.m. Eastern Time or 16:31 UTC, and we'll cut back to SpaceX's live technical commentary at that time to confirm that critical burn occurs, and that will allow the spacecraft deployment sequence to begin at around 11:34 a.m. Eastern Time or 16:34 UTC, and we'll see 99 individual satellites separate from SpaceX's Falcon 9 upper stage as the rocket tracks northbound over the Indian Ocean and then over Asia. During that time, again, 99 satellites will deploy from the second stage over the course of about 30 minutes or so. There are 6 additional CubeSats on board one of the spacecraft that will actually separate from the Falcon 9. That spacecraft is provided by the Italian company D-Orbit. It's an Ion CubeSat carrier vehicle, and that space tug essentially, or a deployment transfer vehicle, will fly a safe distance away from the Falcon 9 rocket and perform its own maneuvers, and then deploy 6 payloads from its carrier pods later on. So that brings the total number of satellites on today's Transporter 3 rideshare mission to 105 satellites. Again, 99 mounted directly onto the Falcon 9's payload stack, and 6 carried aboard the D-Orbit mothership transfer vehicle that will perform its own maneuvers in low Earth orbit and then release those satellites later on. So at this point, we're not hearing any issues in the mission. Stage 2 continues coasting at this time, and the next major event will be the restart of the second stage's Merlin vacuum engine in around 30 minutes or so. So thank you for hanging in with us as we continue to cover the remainder of the mission, some critical milestones still to come. Hello again. Hello again. Now passing T plus 54 minutes in the SpaceX Transporter 3 mission. We're now about a minute or so away from a restart of the second stage's Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine. And this burn will last just around 2 seconds or so. That's all that's needed from the MVAC engine, which produces about 200,000 pounds of thrust, a very powerful engine for an upper stage on a rocket. Just 2 seconds of impulse, all that's needed to circularize, or nearly circularize at least, the orbit of stage 2 at an altitude of roughly 525 to 540 kilometers. It's around 325 to 335 miles or so, give or take. This burn, again, will last just around 2 seconds, and we expect to see SpaceX's live video from the rocket resume to show this event. You can see some of the pulses there from the attitude control thrusters on the second stage, making sure it's just in the right orientation for this restart coming up in around 20 seconds. This map showing the rocket now flying over the Indian Ocean between Africa and Australia. And there we have restart and shutdown of the second stage Merlin vacuum engine. And SpaceX's launch team did call out confirmation that the restart of the second stage placed the rocket and its 105 satellite payloads into the targeted orbit. So everything is right on track. The Falcon 9 right at the correct altitude, correct inclination, correct position to now begin the process, a carefully choreographed sequence to deploy all 105, actually all 99 satellites from the payload stack. 6 additional satellites are carried aboard an Ion orbital transfer vehicle from the Italian company Deorbit. That'll perform its own maneuvers after flying free of the Falcon 9 before later on deploying its 6 satellite passengers. So 105 satellites in total on this mission. 99 will actually be separating directly from the Falcon 9 this morning. Now T plus now approaching around 58 minutes before since launch. That deployment process should begin in around a minute and a half or so. SpaceX has confirmed a deployment of the first satellite, satellite called Unicorn 2E. And the second payload deployment sequence has occurred. The Falcon 9, you're seeing a live view from the second stage looking at the payload stack, flying in orbital darkness now over the Indian Ocean, heading north toward the Indian subcontinent. Now, 16 satellites of the 105 have separated from the Falcon 9 rocket.
Pod 1, separation is confirmed.
Now around 30 satellites have deployed from stage 2. You're listening to live callouts from the SpaceX's
Pod 3,
telemetry
separation is confirmed.
commentator, as each separation event is confirmed through telemetry.
SuperDove, separation confirmed. SuperDove, separation confirmed. SuperDove, separation confirmed. Lemur 2, separation confirmed. Kepler 17, separation confirmed. Lemur 2, separation confirmed. SuperDove, separation confirmed. Aurora Tech, separation confirmed. SuperDove, separation confirmed. SuperDove, separation confirmed. SuperDove, separation confirmed.
As you may have noticed, we heard 24 of the expected 26 deployments. Again, we were not expecting to get all deployments confirmed in real time, so we'll work to confirm with our teams and provide an update a bit later in the webcast. In the meantime, the next 37 deployments are going to happen during a blackout period, which basically means that we lose camera views and telemetry. While we wait to regain access to ground station coverage in a few minutes, sit back and follow along with our animation that shows you where we are in the mission. We'll see you back here at
The Falcon 9 rocket is now flying outside the range of ground stations. It flew just to the north, outside the tracking perimeter of the Bangalore, India tracking station a couple of minutes ago. So the deployments are continuing at this point. However, the rocket is again outside of communications range with ground control. So once the Falcon 9 flies back over our ground station in a few minutes, the launch team will be able to confirm that the deployments that occurred during this blackout did happen as expected, and then that ground station coverage should resume in time for us to catch video, hopefully, of the final few spacecraft separation events. When the Falcon 9 passed out of ground station coverage, it was in the midst of deploying 44 SuperDove CubeSats for the remote sensing company Planet. And these 44 satellites each are about the size of a toaster oven or a shoebox, and they carry medium resolution wide angle optical cameras to collect imagery. And with these new 44 satellites, Planet says it'll have around 240 satellites in its operational fleet. And that's actually good enough to make Planet's constellation the third biggest constellation of satellites in orbit, following SpaceX's Starlink network, providing internet service, and also OneWeb's internet network. Planet's constellation of small satellites collects imagery of all of Earth's land masses on a daily basis, giving Planet's customers, including the U.S. government and military, daily updates on any major changes on Earth's land surfaces. The Falcon 9 upper stage is now back in range of a ground station, now flying in the skies over Svalbard, a Norwegian tracking station in the Arctic. And SpaceX's telemetry commentator confirms that all 37 separation events that occurred during this communications blackout did happen as expected.
SuperDove separation confirmed.
So everything proceeding normally. Now in the home stretch of the deployment sequence, about 17 minutes into this 30-minute sequence right now, and more than 50 satellites have been confirmed deployed. We hope to get a number, a final a tally, a specific tally for you momentarily.
SuperDove separation confirmed.
And these deployments of planets SuperDove,
SuperDove separation confirmed.
and these deployments of planets SuperDove remote sensing satellites continue at this point.
Confirmed. SuperDove separation confirmed. SuperDove separation confirmed. SuperDove separation confirmed. SuperDove separation confirmed.
The Falcon 9 upper stage is now in range of a tracking station in Thule, Greenland. These tracking stations at Svalbard Island and in Greenland are monitoring the separation sequence of the Transporter 3 rideshare small satellites. This deployment sequence now occurring over the Arctic Ocean at an altitude of 448 kilometers.
SuperDove separation confirmed.
SuperDove separation confirmed. Super Dove, separation confirmed. First ISI, separation confirmed. Second ISI, satellite separation confirmed. Umbra 2, separation confirmed. Ukrainian satellite Sich, separation confirmed. Spaceflight customer, separation confirmed. Ion SCV-4, Elysian Eleonora, separation confirmed. Spaceflight customer, separation confirmed.
For those just tuning in, this is SpaceX's Transporter 3 mission, our third dedicated small-sat rideshare program mission. Now, when we came back from the blackout, we heard confirmation of those 37 payloads that were deployed during the loss of ground station coverage. And you just heard the callouts for another 19. Now, as you may have noticed, we were unable to confirm 2 of the 82 deployments because the spacecraft on this mission are small sats, and because there was a large communications blackout during the deploy sequence. It can sometimes be difficult for us to confirm deployments in real time. I'm hearing from our teams that we likely won't have those confirmations in the next several minutes, so we're going to end our live broadcast and we'll
Welcome back to Kennedy Space Center. You're looking at a live view of Launch Pad 40 out at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Seeing quite a few birds now in the area. The Falcon 9 lifted off from this location 1 hour and 32 minutes ago at 10:25 a.m. Eastern Time, or 15:25 UTC. So just to recap, we saw the successful liftoff and climb out of the Falcon 9 rocket toward the southeast over the Atlantic Ocean. The first stage booster shut down and detached and made a successful on-target return to landing zone 1 at Cape Canaveral. This was the 21st landing of a Falcon booster onshore here on Florida's Space Coast, and the 102nd overall intact recovery of a Falcon booster by SpaceX since the first landing back in 2015. Meanwhile, the primary goal of the mission involved the second stage, which continued into orbit with its 105 small satellite payloads. The second stage completed its first orbital insertion burn entered a parking orbit, coasted toward the south over the Pacific Ocean after flying over Central America, and then coasted over Antarctica, headed back north over the Indian Ocean, over India, and reignited its Merlin vacuum engine for a brief 2-second burn that circularized the rocket's orbit at an altitude of around 330 to 335 miles. And then that set the stage for the carefully choreographed, carefully sequenced spacecraft deployment timeline, which lasted around 30 minutes, ending a few minutes ago, to release those 105 satellites into orbit to begin their missions for numerous customers around the world, 20 different countries represented on today's Transporter 3 mission. SpaceX says it confirmed all but 2 of those separation events. We're trying to track down which of the 2 were not confirmed. However, the rest of the satellites did deploy as expected. We saw some of those deployments in live video from the upper stage. Some of the other deployments occurred outside the range of ground stations, so those events were only verified after the fact. But all in all, a successful launch today of the Falcon 9 rocket, and we'll certainly in our coverage we'll note which of those 2 satellite deployments were not confirmed, and hopefully get an update from SpaceX later today on whether they were able to verify through telemetry, through further analysis, whether those spacecraft did in fact separate. However, all in all, again, a highly successful launch today, and we thank you for joining us for our live coverage. The month of January is one of the busiest ever here at Florida Space Coast in terms of launch activity. This was the second launch of the month, following a launch last Thursday, January 6th, a week ago today, that carried up 49 Starlink satellites on a SpaceX Falcon 9 mission. And looking ahead, there are 5 more orbital launches scheduled this month from Florida's Space Coast, beginning next with another SpaceX mission on Monday, January 17th. That's Martin Luther King Day here in the United States, when a Falcon 9 is slated to lift off from Pad 39A here at Kennedy Space Center, just a few miles to the north of Pad 40, where today's mission originated. That Falcon 9 will carry a cluster of around 50 or so Starlink internet satellites in orbit, adding more spacecraft to SpaceX's global broadband network. And that mission will push SpaceX over the 2,000 satellite mark in terms of the number of spacecraft it has launched for the Starlink program since test satellites began flying a couple of years ago. Not all of those satellites remain in operation, however, and the number of satellites operational at this time numbers around 1,500. But that launch will push them over the 2,000 satellite mark in terms of total number launched since launches began. And you're looking at a live view now of Pad 39A, where the strongback structure is now at the pad. It's expected to roll into the hangar sometime in the coming days. And at that point inside the hangar, SpaceX's technicians will lift the Falcon 9 rocket by crane onto the strongback transporter erector, and then we'll see that rocket roll back out to the pad, up the ramp, and SpaceX will lift it vertical in preparation for that launch on Monday. Liftoff time Monday is scheduled for 7:26 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 0026 UTC on Tuesday, January 18th, Monday, January 17th here in the U.S. 4 more missions scheduled later this month beyond Monday, beginning as early as Tuesday with the launch of Astra's small satellite carrier rocket. This rocket is going to carry 6 CubeSats into orbit, sponsored by NASA through the space agency's Venture Class Launch Services program. It's a demonstration launch for Astra to prove its capabilities to NASA to carry small satellites into orbit. That mission will originate from Launch Complex 46 down at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Later next week, a week from tomorrow, January 21st, United Launch Alliance's first launch of 2022 is scheduled. It'll carry two space surveillance satellites in orbit for the United States Space Force. That mission is codenamed USSF 8. It'll fly from Launch Pad 41. And then another SpaceX launch tentatively penciled in for January 27th, carrying the an Italian radar remote sensing satellite, high power radar imaging satellite called Cosmos SkyMed second generation. It'll be the second of the Cosmos SkyMed second generation fleet, collecting radar imagery day and night in all weather conditions of Earth's surface for the Italian Space Agency and also the Italian military. And then there's one more Starlink launch planned by SpaceX sometime before the end of the month. We expect it to be sometime in the last week of January, just based on when these other launches are scheduled. That'll be the window to fit it in before the end of the month. That mission also expected to launch from 39A here at Kennedy Space Center. So all in all, 7 launches planned this month, 2 in the books, 5 to go. And we hope you'll join us for those missions. We'll have live coverage of each and every one of those, and on YouTube and our streaming channel, and also extensive coverage, detailed coverage on our website, spaceflightnow.com. So thank you for joining us once again. And again, a highly successful launch for SpaceX today. SpaceX has transported 3 mission, 105 new satellites in orbit. And we'll see you for the next SpaceX launch on Monday evening from here on Florida Space Coast.